dive into what we saw last night. Hello and happy Veterans Day to those who have served or are serving. We appreciate you, and we will honor you as best as we can for the next few hours. Welcome to First Take, everyone. Shae Cornette, that is Dan, that is Stephen A., and you see Shannon Sharpe there as well to reflect on the comeback that probably shocked none of us that happened last night. That's when the Lions beat the Texans. Detroit was down 16 at halftime. Jared Goff had 5 interceptions. That made Detroit the only team to overcome a 16-point halftime deficit and 5 or more INTs in a game ever. The Lions have now won 7 straight games. And so here's their quarterback, Jared Goff, on the turnover struggle.
I honestly didn't feel like I was playing all that bad, and I was seeing things well. I was throwing it well. Had some unfortunate things there early, but like I've been through a whole lot worse than that. I've been to the bottom, and mentally I've been to the bottom, and some unlucky plays isn't going to throw me off my game.
That is factual, and we've seen that with Jared Goff. But nonetheless, the Lions do win the football game. So, Stephen A., to you first here. An amazing comeback by the Lions. What's your first take on what you saw?
First thought that comes to my mind is that we could be looking at the eventual Super Bowl champions. I can't ignore what I'm seeing from the Detroit Lions. Now, I know one would think your quarterback showed up last night, had a season-worst 50% completion percentage of his passes. Obviously, 5 interceptions in one game. That is absolutely god-awful. Make no mistake about it. But to turn around and find a way to win a game when your quarterback throws 5 interceptions, that says something about your character, your culture. We've sat up there, Shannon and Dio, raving about the Detroit Lions, now winners of 7 straight. But we saw a Detroit Lions team that came out flat, that was bum-rushed by the Houston Texans, that ended up being down 23-7 at halftime. I'm watching Dan Campbell talk to a reporter on the field after halftime. The second half begins. He said, "We're playing badly. We got to play better." He said, "And by the way, we got to create turnovers. If we don't create turnovers, we got no chance of winning this game." And while he's talking, what is it? CJ throws an interception.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, damn. This is what we're seeing from the Detroit Lions. And to overcome 5 interceptions, to do what they have done, 8-1 on the season, best start since 1954. You look at them right now, number 2 offense in the National Football League, a defense that shuts out the Houston Texans in the entire second half. First half, you scored on 6 of your first 7 possessions. Second half, you scored nothing. And I'm looking at this right now. What do they have here? 4 punts, 2 interceptions, and 1 missed field goal in the second half. When you find a way to overcome mistakes like that, we truly never know. You guys know this better than me, Shannon. You truly don't know what somebody is made of, what a team is made of, unless you put them in deep waters, unless you put them under adverse circumstances. And to have a situation like that where you perform that way in the first half, and for your quarterback, who's an MVP candidate coming into this game, top MVP candidate as far as I'm concerned, to throw 5 interceptions, and you still come out and you win that game, I can't say enough about the Detroit Lions. I really, really think that right now, if I had to pick, it would be the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl, and I don't think I would pick against Detroit,
Shannon?
even if they were going against Patrick Mahomes.
Shannon?
Yeah, it tells me what I already knew, that this is a very, very good football team. In order for you to be on the road and to turn the ball over 5 times against a pretty good football team. Now, the Houston Texans haven't played well of late, but they're a pretty good football team. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first time that a team has turned the ball over 5 times through 5 interceptions and still won the game. You have to go all the way back to 2012. Matt Ryan did it against the Cardinals. But guess what happened that year? They went to the NFC Championship game, ended up losing to the San Francisco 49ers, and the 49ers went to the Super Bowl, and they lost against the Baltimore Ravens. So that lets me know that Detroit is a well-rounded football team. Stephen A., you mentioned that Dan Campbell was saying that we got to create turnovers. He understood that we have to steal a possession. We cannot allow them to methodically drive the ball down the field and keep the ball in their hands because we're going to run out of time. We've got to steal a possession somehow. And you're absolutely right. D.O., you know this. If you throw an out ball, and that corner is in a clue of opposition, he's going to pick it. Either he's going to pick it or it's going to be incomplete. You cannot be late on an out throw. He was late. Give Carlton Davis credit. He made an unbelievable catch. And then CJ had Dale wide open. Dio, I don't know why he put so much air on it. He needed to throw that football more on the line. And when you get the ball down in the red zone, you better score touchdowns. Kicking field goals get you beat. That got the Houston Texans beat last night. But this confirmed what I thought to be true for a very long time. The Detroit Lions are a very rounded, well-coached football team. They can run it with those two running backs, and they got great pressure on the interior. Now, I'm a little concerned with their linebackers in coverage because I think they can be had. But the question is, do you have a tight end of one of these upper-tier teams that can take advantage of it? But this is a good football team, guys. This is a new age for the Detroit Lions.
Shannon, are the Lions winning the Super Bowl, though?
Oh, my goodness. Winning.
Can they get there?
I don't believe they would be favored, guys. Stephen A. Dio, I do not believe they would be favored over Kansas City or the Baltimore Ravens. Well, so at this point in time, I'm going to say no.
Before Dio chimes in, let me get on Shannon for a quick second here about something. When you sit up there and you start the answer to a question by saying, oh, my goodness, that is usually reserved for something ridiculous that came out of Dan Orlovsky's mouth. You understand what I'm saying? You don't react like that when it's a question that, damn, I got to think about that one. That's a real good question right now because the brother's making sense. I mean, the brother's making sense. That's what I did. So don't sit up there and give the same kind of answer you gave last week when Dio came out of his mouth and said something. And you said, oh, my goodness. I mean, it's different. You felt differently, man.
But let me ask you a question. Let's just say something happens to one of their key players. Are we still? Now I'm locked in. Shannon, you said they're going to win the Super Bowl.
It already did.
You take that back.
With Hutchinson.
You take that back.
No. Because they went out and got someone that's I'm not saying he's at this juncture of his career, he's Hutchinson. Who are you going to go out and get to replace that one of those running backs?
No.
Who are you going to go out and get to replace Amon-Ra St. Brown? Who are you going to go get replace Jared Goff?
Listen, well, you got dual threats at every damn position. So if one down, the other might be available to you, Shannon. That's number one. And number two, with Hutchinson down, Zadarius Smith ain't played yet. So I'm just looking at what they've been doing despite the adversity that they faced. Remember, Jameson Williams was out as well. Let's not forget that, too. I mean, they're finding ways to win football games.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
A couple things. One, it's clear there's two elite teams in this league, Kansas City and Detroit. Those are the two best teams in football. We kind of knew that going into yesterday. It only got exclamation pointed with both wins. The second thing, and what makes them very similar, is you have to hope that they beat themselves. In a way, to really beat one of these teams, you got to hope that they beat themselves. Houston was on the way to kind of having that happen because of the 5 interceptions, and Detroit finds a way. Kansas City finds a way. Listen, there's no doubt that Detroit can go win the Super Bowl. They are the best team in the NFL. They are the most dominant team in the NFL. They have been all season.
Can or will. As you jumped on me, Dan Orlovsky, can or will.
I am not taking. So before the season, I took the Chiefs and the Lions in the Super Bowl, and I took the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I am not taking the Lions to beat the Chiefs. I think it's a very different thing when you got to beat them and it's win or go home. It's win or the season's over. There's no way that I'm not taking anybody over the Chiefs. When it comes to one or done, win or go home, it's the Chiefs, and it's because of Patrick. That's the difference between them and everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that Detroit is beating Kansas City unless Kansas City helps them in a way, where Kansas City's left tackle plays so poorly or Patrick misses a throw or he has an uncharacteristic poor decision in a crucial moment. So Detroit, they're clearly the two best teams. Can I see them winning the Super Bowl? Of course. If it's somebody other than Kansas City playing in that Super Bowl game.
May I chime in? Little old me, let me just throw this out there, even though Patrick Mahomes is a 3-time Super Bowl champion.
You're going to get yourself in a trouble here.
Oh, you zip it. Ain't nobody scared of your prediction. Listen to me, Dan Orlovsky, okay? Here's the deal. Despite the fact that we're talking about the great Patrick Mahomes, I do like the chances of the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs playing with house money because everybody and their mother's going to pick Patrick Mahomes. I kind of like the Detroit Lions going into an environment where you recognize that they have a chance, but virtually no one is going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. You're kind of playing with house money in that particular situation. That's number one. And number two, let me say this about defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, because I like to keep in mind that when you take into account the way they were getting ramrodded and softened up, by the way, in that first half performance, to come out and perform the way that they performed in the second half, I think a game like that, if this man ends up being the head coach in the National Football League next season, it'll be because of a moment like last night. When you show up and you completely resemble a different squad in the second half than what you were in the first half, I think that's what we're talking about. When you make those adjustments. Remember, Pat, you know, in terms of Jared Goff, I think all 5 interceptions were thrown against zone. All 5 interceptions first 3 quarters. The last quarter, he completed most of his passes, plus a touchdown pass as well in the fourth quarter against the zone. So again, I'm seeing a team. What ails you? What compromises you? Suddenly, you figure out a way to turn that around instead of being prisoner to what's ailing you, and you do nothing about it. I think that's what champions are made of, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think both coaches, coordinators in Detroit are 1-1 when it comes to the head coaching candidates next year. Another reason why, if you're Detroit, you got to go win it, because I think you're going to lose at least one, if not both those. Both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson would be the number 1 person on everybody's interview list for next season. I agree with that.
I'll say this. It's hard to find a team that is level offense, defense, special teams. There's not one ahead of the other. This is the most complete team. I mean, you could even argue in Kansas City, I know they have Patrick Mahomes. It feels like the defense might be even more elite than the offense.
Oh, absolutely. That's been the case.
They're not balanced the way that
totally,
the Lions are.
Totally. But they play to a very specific style, Kansas City.
Correct.
They've
Okay.
also won 16 games in a row. So let's stop poo-pooing on the Chiefs.
Okay,
folks.
fair enough. We'll go to the
Did you just say that? Who the hell is poo-pooing on the Chiefs?
A lot of people are. A lot of people are.
No. We're calling. What we're pointing out, Shannon, is how they've struggled offensively. We know their defense is elite. We know as
Correct.
a team they're elite, and we know that you're getting their best because they're the reigning 2-time defending
How
Super
have
Bowl
they struggled
champions. No, but
offensively?
excuse me. I'm not able to look at you and say, excuse me, you need a blocked field goal at the end. You only score 14 points or so. That's not 16 points. That's struggling.
Denver's defense is awesome.
Excuse me. How did they look against Baltimore?
That's the
How did they look against Baltimore?
game.
Hold on. How did they look against Baltimore?
That's the one game they played bad this year.
I'm saying, excuse me. We have been told. See, this is what bothers me about you. This is what gets on my damn nerves about you sometimes. Because you're acting like we're making something up. The Kansas City Chiefs are great. They're great offensively. They're great defensively in terms of their coach, the play caller, and Andy Reid, Spagnuolo. We know how elite they are. Let's not act like they're looking like the same team they've always looked like offensively.
They've been this for almost 2 years now.
Really? This?